There are three ominous red lights on the Xbox 360 console that signal the infamous Red Ring of Death. It became the symbol of a billion-dollar hardware disaster that shook Microsoft's gaming empire entirely. You see, in 2005, the Xbox 360 launched to massive hype. It was poised to dominate the console world. But beneath all the excitement and hype, there lays a specific ticking time bomb. The Xbox 360 was one of the most successful consoles ever made, and one of the most broken. Gamers went from joyful unboxings to horror as their beloved new console started dying unexpectedly. Those three blinking red lights weren't just an error. They were an omen. They were basically an omen. Microsoft would end up paying over $1 billion to address this catastrophe. And this was gaming's billion-dollar disaster. So yeah, overall, if we were looking back, the Xbox 360 was a smash hit console. But it was also a total mess. How did one of gaming's greatest machines turn into a $1.15 billion, to be precise, into a nightmare? So buckle up, this is the story of the Red Ring of Death. The story begins with Triumph. November 2005. Microsoft launches the Xbox 360, a full year before Sony's PlayStation 3. And the result is a complete pandemonium. Oh shit, we gotta spell that. Okay. P-A-N-D-E-M-O-N I-U-M. I hope I got it right. So anyways, a lot of gamers lined up outside stores in the cold for a chance to grab the new system. It sold out in many regions and demand far outstripped supply. Microsoft had leapfrogged the competition and the 360 was an instant hit. But why was it such a big deal though? For starters, the Xbox 360 felt really next gen at the time. It boss-led HD graphics that made games look sharper than ever before, and it introduced the concept of achievements and a gamer score for every player. Suddenly, every game became a hunt for bragging rights, and Xbox Live on the 360 took online play to the next level. Building on Microsoft's head start in online gaming, you could chat with friends, download game demos, and even stream movies on this console, things that were cutting edge at the time. The early game library helped too. Titles like The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion showed off gorgeous open worlds. Gears of War wowed everyone with its gritty visuals and cover-based shooting. And of course, you can't forget about Halo 3 that was on the horizon, promising to be a system-selling blockbuster. The Xbox 360 quickly gained a reputation as the console for online shooters and big AAA experiences. And Tech Radar later called it the most influential console of its generation for popularizing online gaming and achievements. By 2006, if you were a gamer, the Xbox 360 was a place to be. Microsoft was riding high on strong sales and positive buzz. Ask yourself, where were you when you first saw Xbox 360 gameplay? Maybe at a friend's house, marveling at Call of Duty 2 in HD or watching those dramatic Halo 3 trailers online. The excitement was real. The Xbox 360 era was off to a roaring start and Microsoft was on top of the world. Hey you, what was your first experience or memory you made with the Xbox 360? Let me know in the comments. But of course, you already know it from the title of this video. Cracks began to show a little bit. Literally. Reports started trickling in that some Xbox 360 units were dying unexpectedly. At first, nobody knew exactly what the three flashing red lights on the front of the console meant. All they knew was that their Xbox had suddenly become paperweight. Gamers would hit the power button and be greeted by flashing general hardware failure signal, soon to be notorious as the Red Ring of Death. The response of Microsoft was initially kinda like They kind of like brush it off like there was nothing really wrong. In the early days, the company insisted these were just isolated incidents and within the normal failure rate. They claimed that around 2% was expected. But after all, every new gadget has a few duds, right? But as weeks and months passed, it became really clear that this was not normal. Consoles began failing almost immediately after launch, far beyond anything seen with other systems. Gamers on forums and YouTube started sharing horror stories of their multiple Xbox 360s dying on them. Literally dying on them. And so it was like a mystery unfolding in real time, you know. A lot of questions were like, what caused the three red lights? People literally had three theories, like, was it the power brick overheating, dust buildup, were they playing too many hours of Halo? Microsoft baffled too, and for a while they were in public denial about the scope of the problem. Meanwhile, the so-called red ring of death was wreaking havoc. It often struck without warning. Some players experienced freeze-ups and weird graphic glitches. Think about bizarre checkerboard patterns or streaks on their screen right before the red lights appeared. While others heard the system suddenly biased out a loud, distorted sound and then crashed. And if you were unlucky enough to see those three red quadrants flashing, your gaming session was over. Your Xbox 360 was toast until it could be fixed or replaced. And of course, finally, if evidence mounted that the heat was the culprit. The console was too powerful for its size, but maybe too powerful for its own good. Inside each system, there was a graphics processor, also known as a GPU, that ran extremely hot. Over time, the heat caused the Xbox internal components to warp and fail. You may ask, well, how is that possible? Well, essentially, the constant heating and cooling of the consoles was cracking the very connections inside. The solder, which is the tiny blobs of metals that attach the GPU chip to the circuit board, would literally brittle and crack under thermal stress. And Microsoft had used a new lead-free solder to comply with environmental regulations. But unfortunately, this solder type couldn't handle the sustained high temperatures. As the Xbox would heat up during gameplay and cool down when off, those solder joints slowly developed hairline fractures, and eventually a crack would become big enough that the electrical connections broke and boom, general hardware failure. In simple terms, the Xbox 360 basically cooked itself to death from the inside. The design of the console, with inadequate cooling and a tightly packed case, turned itself into a little console-shaped easy bake oven. And the 360's own graphics chip was the pastry getting overcooked. No one outside Microsoft knew this for sure at the time. To players, it just felt like randomness. You'd be deep in a game and suddenly your screen freezes and your console starts flashing red. And so because of that, panic ensues. People desperately search for DIY fixes, and this gave birth to some creative remedies. The most infamous one was being the towel trick. Yes, gamers would literally wrap their Xbox in towels and turn it on, hoping to make it so hot that it might melt the solder back into place. Which is crazy. I wouldn't do that at all. I would just take it back, you know. But believe it or not, they sometimes revived a dying console for a short while by reseating the chip. But it was only a band-aid on a bullet wound. The engineers back at Microsoft were scrambling to figure out a real fix. Internal memos revealed much later showed that even before launch, that some engineers already knew that the 360 had heat issues and urged a production stop to address it. But the company was rushing to hit the 2005 launch windows. They didn't want any delays, and that decision to ship early rather than fix the design was about to cost them dearly. The mystery was solved Poor cooling and brittle solder equaled a design flaw that would haunt Microsoft for years. And by 2007, the red ring of death was a epidemic. The failure rates were staggering. How staggering? Well, let's compare console failure rates in that era. Here you see the Xbox 360, here the PlayStation 3, and last but not least, the Nintendo Wii. Well, let's start with the Xbox 360. 23.7% failed within the first 2 years, which is nearly 1 in 4 consoles, which is a lot. Above me, you have the PlayStation 3, which failed 10%, which has a 10% failure rate, which is about 1 in 10 consoles. And besides me, on the left, you have the Nintendo Wii, which has a 2.7% failure rate, which was practically bulletproof by comparison to these two. But of course, they didn't focus on performance, but rather affordability, availability. Everyone can play them, even your grandpa. In one user survey by Game Informer magazine, a whopping 54% of Xbox 360 owners reported a failure at some point. That's over half of the units dead or in need of repair. No matter which stats you trust, the Xbox 360 was by far the least reliable mainstream console ever. I mean, you could go for a PlayStation 3, which has almost the same games, or Nintendo Wii if you, I don't know, like to play with your grandpa. Family time quality, you know, Mario Kart. The red ring of death was so common it became a running joke. A very painful joke, and also an expensive one in the gaming community. Owning a 360 in those days meant expecting it to break. As some gamers quipped, if you owned a Xbox 360, you probably owned a broken Xbox 360 at some point. It reached a point where the red ring was almost a rite of passage. You would hear conversations like, "Oh, you haven't gotten a red ring yet? Don't worry, you definitely will." A mix of frustration and a grain of humor was set in. Late night talk shows and webcomics made jokes about Microsoft's grail of a console. News headlines blared with the fiasco like Xbox 360 plagued by failures, or you have the Microsoft extends warranty on broken consoles. Anyway, you already know it. The brand was taking a beating, a real beating. Look at right there what happens, a real beating. The brand was taking a beating, and the story was no longer just on gaming blogs, but it was mainstream news. For example, Xbox 360 plagued by failures. I wanted to do it again. Microsoft, to its credit, eventually owned up in a big way. The turning point came in mid 2007-ish. Under mounting pressure, Xbox leadership, particularly VP Peter Moore, had a fateful meeting with CEO Steve Ballmer. CEO Steve Ballmer. Ballmer Moore. CEO Steve Ballmer Moore essentially said that we have a $1 billion problem, and if we don't fix this, Xbox is done for. And Microsoft made a drastic decision. Every Xbox 360 that suffered the red ring failure would be covered by an extended warranty 3 full years from purchase. And this was unprecedented in the industry, where standard console warranties were like 90 days to 1 year. Microsoft was effectively saying that yes, our product might break, but we'll make it right for you, at least for the next 3 years at least. I mean, this move was absolutely necessary, but oh boy did it cost them. Microsoft announced they were taking a 1.15 billion charge to pay for all these repairs and replacements. Let that sink in. Over $1 billion spent basically swapping out broken Xboxes. Tons of that money went just into shipping and handling. Microsoft was overnighting empty boxes to customers so they could send in their dead consoles. You have fans that nicknamed these nifty little shipping containers the coffins. As the coffins, since you were literally boxing up your deceased Xbox for burial. Repair, I meant. According to Peter Moore, Microsoft spent about $240 million on FedEx alone shipping consoles back and forth. They had entire warehouses dedicated to receiving busted units, fixing them or sending replacements, and shipping them out as fast as possible. For gamers, the process was a mix of relief and annoyance. Relief that Microsoft would fix it for free, and annoyance that you had to lose your console for weeks. Many can recall the experience. The Red Ring strikes, you groan in despair, call Xbox support and hear, "We'll send you an Xbox." Without the X. Just kidding. Just a box. You pick up your beloved deceased 360, send it off, and then endure the agonizing wait. Maybe you dust off an old PS2, or you read a book, or go outside while waiting. Some people waited 3 to 4 weeks or more to get their consoles back. Others had to repeat the cycle multiple times, as even the replacement units failed later on. It was maddening. The scale of the issue was almost surreal. By some estimates, Microsoft was handling thousands of returns per day at the height of the crisis. Entire call centers were fielding angry calls about red lights. And it's no wonder multiple class action lawsuits popped up and the whole fiasco threatened to seriously damage the Xbox brand's reputation. In total, Microsoft's $1+ billion mea culpa undoubtedly saved the day for many gamers who couldn't afford a new console. Every time their console died. But it was a huge hit to the company's finances and image. Through 27 and 28, getting a red ring was so common that it became a grim meme in gaming culture. People would post YouTube videos of their 360 dying with dramatic music. Some even held mock funerals for their own consoles. It was bad. It was really bad. And yet, ironically, many of us kept playing on the Xbox 360. It had the games and the community we loved, so we crossed our fingers and hoped our next console wouldn't crash and burn. As the saying went, the red ring is not the end of the world, it just feels like it when it happens to you. Microsoft knew it had to redeem the Xbox brand and prevent this nightmare from ever happening again. And the recovery was both technical and reputational. First order of business was fix the hardware. Over the next few years, Microsoft quietly released updated versions of the Xbox 360 with improved internals. By 2008, a hardware revision codenamed Jasper introduced a smaller, cooler running chipset. Failure rates started dropping significantly when report noted that Jasper models had under a 4% failure rate, which is a night and day improvement. The worst was finally over by 29. As these fixes rolled out, the Red Ring crisis gradually abated with each new batch of improved consoles. And they lived happily ever after. But the true moment of redemption came in 2010 with the release of the Xbox 360S, which is the slim model. Microsoft didn't just quietly tweak the internals, but they released a full redesign of the console. The Xbox 360S was sleek, black, and most importantly, built to not overheat, which meant that it had better ventilation, a smaller CPU and GPU that ran cooler, and an entirely new motherboard layout. In fact, Microsoft was so confident the red ring was gone, that the new model no longer even had the 4 quadrants of red lights on the front. The iconic ring was replaced by a simple power indicator. So in a way, they engineered the symbol of failure out of the console. On the slim models, if something did go wrong, the power button would show a single red dot or on-screen error message, but never again the ring of death. But the gamble paid off. The Xbox 360S earned praise for being much quieter and more reliable. Reports of failure plummeted. By the time the next Xbox was in the works, the 360 had largely shaken off its red ring reputation. And by 2012, the failure rate of Xbox 360 consoles was finally on par with that of the PlayStation 3. Essentially, normal hardware reliability after years of fixes. It was a very long road for every side, but Microsoft's actions had saved the brand from disaster. Equally important was how Microsoft handled fans during the recovery. The extended warranty and free repairs, while costly, saved Microsoft's relationship with gamers. It showed that the company was willing to make things right. As Peter Moore reflected years later, if Microsoft hadn't spent that $1+ billion to take care of customers, the Xbox brand might not exist today. Well, that's a nice thing from a company. I think every company would do that, right? The drastic step kept gamers' trust alive. Many who sent their console in for repair got it back and continued being loyal Xbox customers. In the long run, that was really worth the money spent. The Xbox 360 went on to have a long life, eventually selling over 80 million units and hosting some of the best games of its generation. Microsoft's aggressive response turned a potential death blow into a merely painful lesson. And what a lesson it was, not just for Microsoft, but for the entire tech industry. The Red Ring fiasco became a textbook case study in hardware design and crisis management. The takeaway for hardware makers: rush your product out before it's ready, and you might ship a broken product. Microsoft learned this the hard way. They had been so eager to beat Sony to market that they cut corners in testing and design, and it came back to bite them. The phrase Xbox 360 red ring of death is still synonymous with hardware failure on a grand scale, and after this, companies supposedly put more emphasis on quality control and pre-release stress testing. It's a lot cheaper to fix a problem before you ship millions of units, even if it means a delay. To Microsoft's credit, they took their lumps and implemented the fixes, and by the end of the 360's life, the console image had recovered. In fact, Microsoft even got a bit cheeky about the whole thing years later. In 2024, they sold an ugly sweater with the Red Ring of Death design on it as a holiday gag, and it sold out among techies who remember the whole saga. Time heals all wounds, and apparently can turn them into a joke mark. I mean, they had to get back the $1+ billion costs in some way. But despite all the hardware heartbreak, the Xbox 360 era remains a fond memory for many gamers, and despite all the hardware heartbreak, the Xbox 360 era remains a fond memory for many gamers. This console, for all its flaws, was home to some of the greatest games ever made and a vibrant online community, especially in Modern Warfare 2. From finishing the fight in Halo 3 to exploring Skyrim to causing chaos in GTA, the Xbox 360 delivered countless iconic moments. It's a testament to how strong the 360's game library and experience were that it survived such a disaster. For all its faults, the Xbox 360 earned a place in gaming history, and in the end, Microsoft's billion-dollar blunder turned into a story of redemption. The Red Ring of Death will never be forgotten, but neither will the Xbox 360's impact on gaming. So yeah, and they lived happily ever after. And that was a tale of the Xbox 360's Red Ring disaster, a nightmare that nearly sunk a console and the massive effort it took to fix it. But let's end it on a positive note. For those who stuck with the 360, it was totally worth it. It gave us amazing memories, provided us with some way to have quality time with friends and family. And for me, the first game I ever played on the 360 was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I'll never forget how jaw-dropping it was to see it at the time. But what was the first game that you played on the Xbox 360? Let me know in the comments. And if you have lived through the Red Ring saga, share your story. Did it happen to you, and how many times? Yeah, that was basically it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And until next time, keep on playing, hopefully with all 4 green lights on. I'll see you in the next one, and yeah, have a great day. Bye bye.